Welcome to the market of geopolitics, where alliances are the ultimate currency. And today, we're diving into a really big one, a landmark defense agreement between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan that is literally reshaping the strategic map of the Middle East and South Asia. This is a deal that signals a huge shift in how nations shop for security. And this right here, this is the heart of the deal. This single sentence transforms decades of quiet, behind-the-scenes cooperation into a very public, ironclad commitment. It's a classic Article 5-style pledge. An attack on Riyadh is now officially an attack on Islamabad, and vice versa. But what does that actually look like in practice? Well, it's called the Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement, or SMDA for short. You see, for years, these two have had a close, but kind of informal security relationship. We're talking Pakistan training Saudi forces, lots of joint exercises, that sort of thing. But the SMDA, this takes that relationship out of the shadows and locks it into a formal, institutionalized military framework. Make no mistake, this is a massive upgrade. So what's actually inside this institutionalized framework? First off, it establishes a permanent joint military committee that's all about constant coordination. It also formalizes intelligence sharing, so basically what one country knows, the other one knows too. And of course, it expands all those joint training programs, embedding their forces even closer together. The goal here is crystal clear: create a totally unified front that will make any potential aggressor think twice. Okay, this all begs the big question. Why now? I mean, a pact this big doesn't just happen overnight, right? It's a direct response to a security landscape that is changing incredibly fast, where the old guarantees are starting to feel a little shaky and new threats are popping up all over the place. And look, this really didn't happen in a vacuum. The momentum has been building for years. You could say it started back in 2019 with those attacks on Saudi oil facilities, which just exposed some deep security vulnerabilities. Then, the Gaza war completely shattered regional stability. But the real catalyst, the final push, was that strike in Doha. For Riyadh, seeing an attack on a neighbor, one that hosts a major U.S. base, well, that was the ultimate signal that the old security setup just wasn't going to cut it anymore. So you put all those events together, and you get the core drivers for this pact. There's this growing feeling that the U.S. is strategically pulling back from the Middle East, right as threats from groups like the Houthis are getting worse. And that has pushed Saudi Arabia to seek what they call strategic autonomy. Basically, the freedom to build a whole portfolio of security partners, instead of putting all their eggs in one American basket. Okay, so we've covered the why. Now let's get to the really interesting part, the so what. What are the immediate ripple effects of this powerful new alliance going to be across the region and, honestly, for the rest of the world? The biggest thing to understand is that this pact signals a fundamental shift. The old model for security in the Gulf was simple: rely on the United States. That was the whole playbook. The new model, it's all about multi-alignment. It's hedging your bets, building a whole network of partners from the US to China, and now a formal military alliance with a nuclear-armed Pakistan. We are literally watching a new security architecture for the Gulf being built right before our eyes. And that, of course, brings us to the elephant in the room, the most sensitive question of all. Does this deal give Saudi Arabia protection under Pakistan's nuclear umbrella? Now, officially, both sides are staying very quiet on this. But even the possibility, man, it has sent absolute shockwaves through the global non-proliferation community. A formal link between a major Gulf power and a nuclear state, it just creates a dangerous new precedent and really escalates the security dilemmas for everyone in the region. Now, for Pakistan, this agreement is a massive geopolitical win, no question. It formalizes its role as a key security provider in the Persian Gulf, and having that kind of backing from Riyadh really strengthens its hand against its main rival, India. With this newfound strategic confidence, we could definitely see Islamabad taking a much more assertive stance on all kinds of regional issues. And that brings us to the final piece of this very complicated puzzle, India. Because New Delhi now finds itself in an incredibly tricky spot. They have to figure out how to navigate a new reality where one of their key strategic partners, Saudi Arabia, is now in a formal defense pact with their primary adversary, Pakistan. India's official response so far has been, cautious and measured. But let's be real, this statement from the External Affairs Ministry is classic diplomatic code. When a diplomat says, "We will study the implications," what they're really saying is, okay, alarm bells are ringing and a major strategic reassessment is happening right now. They know the game has changed. And if you want to understand just how complex this is for India, it all comes down to this number: $42 billion. That's the value of their bilateral trade with Saudi Arabia. Riyadh isn't just some partner, it's a critical energy supplier and a massive investor. India just can't walk away from that, so they're forced to balance these deep economic ties with a new, very uncomfortable security reality. This chart lays out the dilemma perfectly. On one side, you have India's partnership with Saudi Arabia, which is all about energy and economic investment. On the other side, the Saudi-Pakistan relationship is now cemented by strategic defense, hard power. For New Delhi, it means they have to maintain a strong friendship with a country that's now formally allied with their #1 rival. It's a diplomatic tightrope walk of the highest order. So what can India actually do? Well, the strategy isn't to retreat, but to actually double down. New Delhi will probably try to intensify its own defense cooperation with Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states. They have to accelerate their military modernization to keep up. Plus, they need to keep diversifying their partnerships and use their diplomatic muscle on global stages to protect their interests. Which brings us right back to where we started. The Saudi Pact is a flashing sign that the market for security is changing. Nations are diversifying their portfolios, they're making deals that would have been totally unthinkable just a decade ago. And it leaves us with a final, really crucial question. In this new marketplace of global power, what is the ultimate price of security? And who exactly is willing to pay it?